Hello, people of YouTube. This is Gray's Guitars. I am Steve Gray. Thank you for watching. Today we are finally going to be going over how to shim your guitar neck. In order to do this, you are going to need a few tools, which I would highly recommend. For starters, obviously you're going to need a guitar that needs a shim neck. The reason we're shimming this neck, if you're not familiar, I did do a should you shim your guitar neck video. Now this is going to be how to, because this guitar does actually require a shim neck. And the reason is, if you look at my bridge, it may be hard to see, I'll try to get a close-up later. My high E and my low E, they are as far down to the ground as you possibly can. They are actually resting on the plate. That's bad. That's not... Well, it's not bad, it's not good. They're not, wiggling, causing vibration issues, anything along those lines, but at the same time, my high E is sitting at like 2.5 millimeters. I'm going to be using millimeters for this video. You can use tenths of an inch or inches if you prefer. I like to use millimeters. So that's bad because I cannot get my high E as low as it should be. According to my D'Addario string action guide here, there's a little chart on the back that tells you what it should be. An electric guitar height should be about 1.6 millimeters, and I am almost double that, which is bad. I'll measure it right now just for the heck of it. Let's see what we're at. Yeah, it's not quite 2.5 millimeters, but it's pretty friggin' close. So we're going to have to do some decent adjustment. I'm going to be shimming this guitar with a piece of just regular plain paper like this. This is my spec sheet for setups. Piece of paper is 0.00 of an inch. So what's that, 4/1000ths of an inch? And then I believe it is 0.10 millimeters. So we're going to have to fold that piece of paper several times in order to get the desired thickness, so that way we can shim the neck. Keep in mind we are going to have to overfold it, and the reason we're going to overfold it is because if I, for example, right now, were just to do the full 1 millimeter, that would mean that I wouldn't be able to move the bridge. So I want to be able to adjust these off of the bridge plate, so we're going to actually have to go over that amount, so that way our saddles are sitting up higher and they're off the bridge plate. Tools you're going to want: Allen set of some sort. You can get a set of these, both metric and standard, for pretty cheap. I think I got my set for like $8, Harbor Freight. Gonna probably want a capo, because you're gonna most likely need to check your neck relief, everything along those lines afterwards. String gauge is gonna be good. Screwdriver, not this specific screwdriver, but you're gonna probably need a couple of different screwdrivers, because you're going to need to take the neck off the guitar. And of course, a handy dandy string winder is going to be useful as well, because I'm going to keep the strings on this guitar. They're fairly new strings. I don't feel like buying new ones. I do have a new pack. I don't feel like restringing it, I should say. So all I'm going to do is loosen the strings on this, pop the neck off, put in the shim, trim it up with a pair of scissors. You're going to need a pair of scissors too, or a knife, something along those lines. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's a knife, little knife, to trim the paper, because you want the paper to match the pocket. You don't want it to be overfolded on the edges, because then it could actually raise the neck higher than you want it, causing more problems where you're going to have to pop the neck off again in order to correct said problems. So those are the tools we're going to need. I'm going to go borrow a workbench. We'll have some nice lighting. You probably won't see my face again until the end of this video, and it's going to be a little bit of a process. The reason I'm doing it to this guitar is because both of my Les Pauls I tried to set up. I don't know if it's a nut issue or a bridge issue. At this point, I think I need to take them to a professional for further evaluation, and I really haven't been playing guitar a lot lately, so I figured if I get the Strat right, at least I'll have something I can mess around with for a while until I decide where and who I want to bring my Les Pauls to get them fixed properly and possibly set up properly, because there's some issues there. There's some buzzing, especially on my Epiphone. It's really annoying me on the E and A string. Like, I have it set up to specs according to my measurements, and just up and down the whole fretboard just on those two specific strings. So I'm thinking the nut may just be time to replace it. I think that's part of the problem. But we'll wait and see. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I just want to raise some of the saddles, because when we put the neck back on, I don't want the strings kind of slamming into my fingerboard. So I just have here my tiny little Allen key, and all I'm going to do is just tighten these a little bit. This actually might be easier. We're going to loosen the strings. And we're just doing them one at a time. Because I'm going to have to loosen these. I might not loosen these all the way right now. It doesn't hurt. Honestly, it doesn't hurt. Because what I'm going to end up having to do is loosen them to the point of where I can get the neck off. So I'm just going to see how floppy we are. This one, it has a relic vibe to it already. And I like that. You know, I messed up the paint job a little bit when I was doing it. You know, it's the first time I painted a guitar. That might be enough, the way I got it. Everything seems pretty loose. And it's hard to see, but we are just going to tighten these about halfway. I know I'm going to have to readjust all this later anyway, but we are just going to do this for the sake of moving it out of the way. Because what this is going to do is it's going to raise this part of the neck. This whole part of the neck is going to come up higher. And I'll actually show you where you can see that once we get the neck off. And we're just doing this a little bit. And this is going to be a pain to fix it where I want it, but it is what it is. This is what you have to do. Unless you have a like a Gibson style bridge, then you won't have to, you know, tighten like 12 screws. But I mean, this thing, let's see, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard with this camera, but this saddle and this saddle were, well, still are, the one isn't anymore, touching the ground, touching the base plate, which is not the best. I mean, it's not terrible, but I don't recommend it. You should have it a little bit off the base plate at the very least. This is a replacement screw, which is why this one looks funky. It is all shorter than all the other ones. And I honestly wouldn't mind buying replacement screws for all of these because they jab into my hand a bit. Alright, so this is raised. This is all nice and wobbly. Time Phillips head screwdriver. And that came out really easy. Make sure you know where each bolt goes because these two are shorter than these two. And I will show you a comparison in a minute. I like to do the star pattern. So if you're not familiar with the star pattern, it's kind of like crisscross. Let's see, these ones actually might be the same length. Yeah, these ones actually are the same length. Some guitars, these bolts are a little bit longer than these, so you do have to be careful. But I want to put them all back in the same hole. Basically what it means is you go crisscross applesauce. Kind of like in a star pattern. This one only has 4 bolts. That's a good cracking noise. And, I mean, they don't go into the neck that much. The reason the screws are so long is because they got to get through this big chungus right here. Let's see. So they got to get through all of this, and then I'm flicking you off, sorry, and then get into the neck as well. So, remove that plate. Make sure you put that on the correct way as well. I'm just placing that off on the side. Now comes the interesting part. We're going to flip this back over. Ready? And she's free, just like that. And she's going to be held on with string tension. All I'm doing is just gently putting her to the side. Now I know for a fact, where's my string gauge? Here's my string gauge. I know for a fact that this, my low E string was 2.25, meaning it was way too high. So we are going to take my paper, and I have my measurement sheet here. I'll show you what I'm working with. I'm just going to do this real quick. And I have a piece of paper, is 4/1000 of an inch, or 0.10 millimeters. So what that means is I want this to be about 0.10, yeah, right around 1 millimeter. So what we're going to do here is that we don't want a huge section. We just want a small pocket right under the screw hole. So if you can see the screw holes, I'm going to try to cram it in right under the screw hole and try to cut it so that way it fits in that section. So now I've folded it once. So there's going to be 0.20. That is going to be 0.40 of a millimeter. And this is going to be 80. And now the reason I'm stopping here is because if I fold this again, it is going to be 1.6 millimeters. That is going to be a little bit too much. So we're going to stop at 80. We're going to go ahead and cut this up. Come on, camera. We're going to just cut this piece of paper up and match it to the pocket. Now, this should be exactly where I want it to be. We're just going to trim the edges off here. Well, we'll just trim the one edge off. And then just line it up with the hole. The pencil, technically, yes, the pencil lead will technically raise it a tiny bit. So that's why you got to make sure if you're using this with scrap paper like I am, that's beautiful, that you're not, doesn't have any printing on it, because you want it to be exact. You want to know exactly where it is. Now the guys at the Fender factory, and as you can see I'm just slicing the corners off here so it fits better in my pocket. Guys at the Fender factory, they like to use, it doesn't fit in the whole pocket, but it's close enough. And remember, it doesn't have to be, it's okay if there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. It's not the end of the world. They like to use, I'm just going to, sandpaper, like a piece of sandpaper. That's kind of their go-to. Any type of paper will work. Yes, you can go buy the fancy Stumac shims. Oh crap, I cut through it. That's fine. The layers are there. I cut through the wrong end like an idiot. But you don't really need to do that. Where I want it to be, right there. So that should be just enough. See how it's down past the bolts? Not covering it. So the next task is to make sure that's all stuck together, because it's under pressure. Once this goes in there and the bolts are on there, it ain't going to go anywhere, so I'm really not that worried about it. Alright, so I'm just going to tighten, you're not seeing it, I'm tightening my two E-strings. The reason I am doing that is so that way I get a little bit more pressure. Haha, there we go. So now, tighten the E-strings when you're done, that's a good idea. Put more pressure on here, put more pressure on the neck. That way when I flip this over, it stays where it should. That's already coming out, it's fine. Okay, I'm going to bring this back over here a little bit. Plate. And you just do this by hand. Oh God! Caught it. I usually, when I do this type of stuff, I don't typically film it. So, when I'm working on my guitars anyway. Tight. 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 Now, if I did this right, my bridge should be raised a little bit higher. So I am going to go ahead and just get my... They're not going to be tuned to pitch right now. I don't have a tuner down here with me. Also a good tool to have. I'm just going to tighten the strings. For this part of it, that's all that matters. I'll worry about tuning the pitch later. I shouldn't really have to adjust anything. Like intonation-wise, I mean, because it's the same strings, same length. Should be the same length. I might have to mess with the intonation later on. This is my G string. You get tightened too, Bessie. That one was really loose for whatever reason. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to check out my E. Let's see if you can see it. It's kind of hard to do it with the way this bench is, so I apologize if you can't fully see what I'm doing. But I'm taking the string action gauge, 12th fret, and yeah, we got to lower this now. So, going back to the bridge and just releasing some tension off of it. Not all of it, just some. And we take this back out. My head might be in there too. And I did too much, so now I gotta tighten it again. Check it one more time. I like mine a little higher, about 1.75. That side's good. Now what I'm going to do, I'll show you solid. That's me dropping the string action gauge. Lucky for me, I have several of those, so if I did damage it, which I might have put another scratch on it, not a big deal. This is going to be friggin' super high. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, this is like 2.5 millimeters. We got to bring this down a lot. An important thing when you're adjusting this, and I'm going to do it with my left hand just so you can see what I'm doing, is one, you don't want this to be touching the base plate, and two, you want it to be even. So both screws, make sure they're about even with each other. In this case, I can't do that. I just have to eyeball it. And then you just check your action again. And yeah, it's about 2. So now what I'm going to do, because of laziness, there are like set specifications for all the middle strings, but this is going to be a little higher than this. This is going to be a little higher than this. These two are going to be the highest. And that's all you really have to do it, and that's called radiusing. If I actually had a radius gauge, which I do not, that's something good to have as well, is you actually measure the radius of the fretboard, come down here underneath it, and then you do your 2 screws here, your 2 E strings, and then you radius it to the rest of it. Eyeballing it, it ain't the best, but it's not the worst either. So I'm just going to loosen this to the point where I think it's about good to go. Some of these, I'm going to do it with my left hand, mute that. And if I think anything's too high, well, I'll just lower it later. This one's messed up really bad. This one, I got a little happy with one of the screws and not the other. And basically how you want to do it is these two, actually that's actually not correct because your low E is always higher, but these two are, it's going to probably progressively go lower. I mean, you can radius it out, as I said, if you want. Let me see here if on my spec sheet, if I actually have anything here that shows this. I think I only have this for a Les Paul. I don't believe I actually have this set up. We're going on a spec sheet somewhere or a link to one, hopefully. I can do that as well if I remember. Put a spec sheet to get everything situated here. But the good news is, it's probably going to sound like crap right now, but yeah, I got to tighten my strings and tune it up. But that's the next step. So we did the hard part. Loosen your tuners first. Raise your bridge if you need to by a little bit. Put in your shim. This whole piece is raised. I know it's probably hard to see. I'm going to adjust righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So if I go right in here, you can actually see this dot right here was actually, you couldn't see it before, or saw very little of it, and now you can see a little bit more of it out of the pick guard for my 21st fret there. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I may do a part 2 if I want to set this up. I'm just going to hold it here for now. But yeah, that's shimming a neck. Learn from my mistakes. If you have a radius gauge, use it. If you cut through all of the paper, it's okay to stack it. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything because it's sandwiched in there. Like that chunk of paper that raised it, the little bit I needed, you know, my my 0.80 of a millimeter, so 0.80 of a millimeter is how high I raised this, and now none of these are touching, and I can guarantee you once I tune this up, it'll sound great. I may do a follow-up video, but well, there you have it. That is how to shim a guitar neck with a bolt-on guitar where your action just isn't where it needs to be. I hope the video was informative to you. I hope you used the tools that you needed. I have eyeballed it before, in which case the first time I did it, I eyeballed it, which is why I took it out. And it was like way too high, messed a lot of stuff up, folded the paper way too many times. So it's very important to measure twice, cut once, is the old carpenter saying. In this case, it is measure twice, place piece of paper once. Because you don't want to be constantly popping the neck off, even though it's not really going to hurt the guitar. Minus, you may get a finish crack possibly in the process. But yeah, measure twice, cut once. I'll leave you with that. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell, leave a like, and feel free to comment down below what you would like to see for future guitar and music related videos. This is Gray's Guitars. I am Steve Gray. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a good one.